Captain's Log Supplemental. The previous captain and his command staff threw us a welcoming party last night. Me and the relief crew are moving into quarters over the next 2 weeks. My personal effects were on the docket for transporting earlier this morning, but there seems to have been some issues with the transporter buffer algorithm. Normally, they'll load all of your items into the buffer and then transport it directly to your quarters during crew assignment. But either someone was playing a prank, or our personnel manifest has some errors on it. All our items wound up in someone else's quarters. And I definitely don't own a cat.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Captain's Log Supplemental. My name is Stanford. I almost screwed up right away, but managed to save it the last minute there. I am joined this week by the same people I'm always joined by. I've got our lovely producer, Mariah.
Hi there.
All right, good talk. We'll see you out there.
Our lovely producer, Mariah.
I said hi there.
Hi. And we have Rob.
Hello.
Can you all not hear me?
We didn't hear you the
Now
first
we can.
time, no.
Weird.
And then we, of course, have Christopher.
Hey.
So, Captain's Log Supplemental, yeah, we're watching Star Trek. We're a rewatch. We're doing it in chronological order, so we're still in Enterprise, although we are over the hump, so hopefully this... I just realized I still haven't done them bingo cards. Fuck.
This episode was definitely not over the hump.
No, there was a lot of hump in this one.
Yeah.
I have started posting TikTok videos, so I have scheduled up to Friday.
They were good, too. I was impressed.
Oh, thanks. Wait. Were you impressed because, like, you're surprised that I was able to do something good?
No. I'm like, oh, that's a good quality clip right there.
All right. Well, awesome. I'll take that fucking praise. Shit. Rob is again recording in our house because he is still in the process of moving, although I believe next week you should be good for recording at your own home. Although you're welcome to come here anyways because I make dinner.
I do like food.
Food is good.
I feel like I had some banter earlier, honey. You and I were talking about, but I don't remember what it was.
No.
Apparently
No.
neither does she.
All right, well, then...
They still can't hear me?
No, I
No,
heard
we can
you.
hear you.
You said
Oh.
no. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Jesus Christ. Listen to my wife.
Better.
All right. Well, then without further ado, let's get into it. So this episode is called Rajiin. And yeah, I'll save my review for the end.
Will you?
Well, yes. Well, yeah, I will. All right. So, cold open. We open with the Xindi Council Room. This is kind of where we've been opening lately. Some sort of lab got destroyed. I can't recall very well whether or not we actually saw that lab get destroyed, like, on screen in a previous episode.
I don't think so. I think this was just like hey, there was an accident because we're trying to rush to build a big super weapon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Because, yes, it turns out that the Xindi are trying to build a massive weapon to wipe out all of Earth. And they want to... I guess, like, they want to do it with just a big old laser or something. But they're like, maybe we should just do it with a biological weapon because, obviously, the laser thing's not working with your lab all broken.
Well, hey, I mean, if you can't take out the Earth, you take out all the Earthlings.
They just want to build a sweet ass Death Star. That's all.
Yeah, so that little piddly ass one. I guess, like, I don't know if this gets cleared up, but I don't understand the point of them lasering Florida.
I think they attribute it to a weapons test, but like,
why didn't
maybe
you test it
don't
somewhere?
give it away, right?
Yeah. Anyways, there is actually a little bit of fairly good storytelling here. It was probably an accident.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, man, I hate this episode, but like the bare bones of it are actually decent.
Yeah. So, and they because like this is the enemy Xindi Council. Like we don't know these people. They're just people we see talking, and they say things that don't quite jive with what we do know about the humans, and it's kind of in an interesting way. The specific way they say in this one is they're talking about how they attacked a trillium mine, which is not quite what happened. Like they did not attack that trillium mine. But it is interesting that, like, we are seeing what the other side thinks they know. And that is actually a surprisingly, like I said, probably accidental, surprisingly well done piece of, like, storytelling.
Yeah, I liked, looking back on when I'd watched this season before, I think that perspective is what I think made this an interesting plot overall.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The person in charge of the weapons development gets threatened by the menacing sea creatures, Indy, and then we get some jangly Faith of the Heart.
This new version of the intro is killing me. Like, I hate how catchy it is. And I don't like that I like it.
It's like a turd that somebody threw glitter on.
I don't agree that it's catchy.
It's I don't know, like,
it's optimistic.
Like earworm. Yeah, I say earworm is not the right word. It's just like so, like, bubbly for Star Trek.
It's like the call me maybe of Star Trek intros.
Exactly.
Where's that AI generator? What if Carly Rae Jepsen did a Star Trek intro? Okay, so we opened up into the actual Act 1 with Trip and T'Pol doing another one of their I want to say horny touching episodes, although to be very fair, probably more than the show deserves. This was actually pretty tame. It wasn't really horny, other than Trip's just not wearing a shirt, which, like, that's fine. Trip doesn't have to wear a shirt. I don't mind.
I want to provide
they had to save it for the rest of the episode.
I want to provide you with a direct quote. Go a little harder. Perfect.
Okay, right, that's out of context.
So without context, that sounds pretty bad.
However,
this was not as bad as it generally is on this show.
Yeah, as these scenes have played out previously.
There is an interesting moment right at the end of this scene where, and this is where, like, I know these two characters end up in a relationship, so that knowledge is kind of twisting how I'm seeing stuff. And the last thing that T'Pol says here actually sounds like she's kind of hitting on him in an interesting way.
Yeah, kind of.
Her last line was, "It is no business of so and so." Oh, is it of Reed? It's no business of so and so,
Lieutenant Reed's,
whether or not you and I are in a relationship. And she said it in this way that was very like, "So you're open to a relationship?"
Right.
But yeah, I mean, basically, Trip just needs to be a professional. Archer, we cut to Archer. He's restless. He's not sleeping well. It turns out he's itchy. He goes into medical bay to complain to Phlox about how itchy he is. And it turns out that this is actually a callback to them being transformed in the last episode.
I did not get that at first until, like, the very end of the scene where he's like, "You transformed to another alien." I'm like, oh, I thought he just had, like, some type of, like, weird alien herpes or something like that.
That's what I thought too. And I was like, oh, that was surprisingly well done too. That was a nice little call.
Yeah.
It was pleasantly. I was pleasantly surprised that they actually showed a little continuity from week to week here. Like, it's not typical for Enterprise.
Yes, and
and I think that's something this season does more so than previous seasons in general.
Right, and I think that, like, it doesn't have to be like a long form story arc. These little nods are plenty. Like, just give us an idea that, like, this stuff is happening in the context of one another in terms of the episodes, rather than each one being isolated.
It was like that one where they, like, wound up at the Jiffy Lube.
Right. Yeah, because that was all from the cascade from that mine in the with the Romulan.
Yep.
Right. Phlox mentions crewman Cutler.
I know we got a Cutler call out.
And a very unfun piece of trivia I learned. This is the last time Cutler will ever be mentioned because the actor died like a month after this episode.
For real?
Yeah, she had an undiagnosed heart extra beat. Is it arrhythmia? So, some sort of arrhythmia.
Damn. Crazy.
So, yeah, because I was like, oh, hey, Cutler! Because I was like, I don't know, Cutler was cool. I would like her to come back, but...
Yeah, Chris was just asking about her the other week.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So, yeah. Now, in hindsight, that was very insensitive of you, Chris.
Oh.
Okay, so they're gonna try to get some Trellium from some kind of trading station. They've got a bead on getting some Trellium from this like trading station. So they pop out a warp next to this like pretty blue planet. The CGI is okay in this one.
Yeah.
And they beam down, or no, they don't beam down. They shuttle pod down to like a typical Star Trek like science fair looking market, because that's all Star Trek knows how to make. And I don't know, there's a level of like, we're trying to show that this is like a market that's busy and full of aliens. So of course an alien tries to sell them an animal.
I was just happy they didn't go immediately to the alien strip club this time.
No. They waited a few minutes before they went there.
They did.
My note was, hey, they didn't go to the alien strip club. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So they're looking for some kind of chemist that's supposed to help them synthesize Trellium, which I did not realize was an option considering that they were trying to mine it earlier.
They did mention that, like, before they went down to the planet.
Yeah.
That it was, like, some chemist or something like that.
Turns out Trellium comes in a few different varieties. Trellium A is easy to synthesize, but Trellium D will beat your ass, and that's the one they need. Archer says that they're on a diplomatic mission, and that's why they want to know so much about the Xindi, which is like, man, shut the fuck up. What the fuck?
He ain't fooling nobody.
So while Trip and the chemist are negotiating over the cost it will of the formula for the Trellium, Archer goes and checks out the sex club. The least friendly sex workers ever are like on display. Although I've come to realize after a few minutes why they are not friendly looking, and that is because these are like sex slaves. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in the deep dive.
Oh, yay.
In accordance with the class of humanoid you are is the size of your forehead, a class 6 humanoid shows up to talk to Archer. His horror head goes all the way up. It's incredibly high.
He had 8 head.
Yeah, maybe a class 8 humanoid. He tries to talk Archer into buying some ladies. Archer's like, "Nah, I'm good." Archer makes eye contact with like pretty blonde lady. Now, it's one of those things where like camera angles alone, you could tell which of the sex workers was important, but also she was the one with the least makeup that made her look like an alien. I don't know if y'all noticed that. Like, she's basically the most human of them, so it was like, well, obviously that's the important one because Archer's going to want to fuck the human, not like the lizard lady.
Right.
She is standing in the back, breathing heavily. Her breasts are very on display, and Archer like makes eye contact with her, and this like weird scanners shit happens. And then he's like, "She's pretty," and the sex slave seller is like, "I'll sell her to you," and he's like, "Nah, no thanks," and he leaves. Then like as they're leaving the station, because he meets up with Trip. Trip's like, "We got what we needed." As they're leaving the station,
the weirdest thing happened here. A Baywatch episode cut into the middle of the Star Trek episode.
I have slow motion cleavage running. Like,
some people stand in the darkness, afraid to step into the light.
And it was weird because like Archer's leaving. He hears a commotion behind him. He turns back, and in slow motion, this woman is running toward him. It cuts back to him. He is in full speed motion. Cuts back to her, still slow motion, and there's just a lot of movement.
A lot of it's a jiggle. It's a jiggle.
And it was just so radically obvious what was happening here because they did not need to stretch this footage.
No.
But like they did.
Not at all. Like, yeah, let's yeah.
And the proprietor of the sex slaves are like, "Stop her, she's my property." They catch Archer kind of she runs to Archer and is like, "Save me," and he's like, "She doesn't want to go with you," and he's like, "It's my property." So they get into a fight. Now, the phaser fights on this show are getting better. The fisticuffs are not. It's just as terrible.
At this point, that's a Star Trek trope at this point. It's terribly choreographed fisticuffs.
I really love, though, how Reed just immediately whips out his phaser like he's going to shoot at them. Like, Archer's, like, grappling this guy.
Yeah.
There's no way Reed gets a clear shot off.
Yeah,
he
but
wants to go
also,
pew-pew.
it's at stun, so just shoot everybody and sort it out later. He drags
here,
this
shoot
fight.
your captain.
Yeah.
Yep.
He drags this fight into the Petco, and fucks him up against the cat cages. And then eventually he gets him far enough away that the slave owner gets shot. Now, the sexy breast heaving lady has asked for asylum from Archer. Archer shoots the slave owner, and then they skedaddle. They do not go to save any of the other slaves. Fuck those bitches. We are skedaddling. We get back up to Enterprise. She's in the she's in med bay. They could not get her any clothing. So she's still in her skimpy, like, I don't know, nightgown.
I'm like, Jesus, give her a blanket or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw her in a spare uniform.
She's like, oh,
we don't have any. We've gone over this.
Yeah, we don't have any cut for pretty ladies. The one cryo princess took the last one.
She took the last one.
This pretty lady is like, oh, you own me now. And he's like, I don't own you. Like, you'll get some quarters and stuff. And Phlox gives Archer this, like, really creepy side eye, which is like, I mean, shit, man, if she's wanting it, like, go for it. Like, it's real gross. It's real gross. I don't like that from Phlox.
What? I didn't really interpret it that way. I interpret it as like, this feels gross right now, look.
Well, I got a different read off of him. I thought that she had affected him, like she would later affect the rest of the crew.
Maybe.
All right, so Act 2. We get back down to the planet, and Trip is trading the things that he promised to the chemist, which are spices. Now, this is good shit. Like, this is exactly what should be traded, are things that are unique to your planet that are nowhere else in the galaxy, right? And, flora and fauna, spices and things, like, that's cultural things. That's exactly what should be traded.
Dude sampled the spices in the grossest way.
Yeah, for him, they are like nasal injections. So this dude loves sneezing, which actually, it reminds me of Liam. When Liam was like a baby and he would sneeze, he laughed his fucking ass off. So after a couple of very orgasmic sneezes from this guy, Trip gets the formula and they head back up to the ship. This is where we are told that, like, refining Trellium D is very unstable, so you have to be very careful. And if you fuck it up, it'll explode, yada, yada, yada. We get back up to the ship where Rajiin, I'm sorry, that's the woman's name, is the title of the episode. Rajiin is the name of this woman. She is wearing a different but still skimpy dress.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, she did not leave the planet with luggage. Like, it was just her, which means that in some way, shape, or form, either these were already on board or they were replicated or something. They made her some skimpy dresses.
I could just see her like, no. Less sleeves. No. Less clothes.
Also, you got to remember, we don't have replicators yet. We just have protein resynthesizers, which makes it weirder.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're edible skimpy dresses.
Yeah.
It's like a fucking fruit roll up.
All right, I might be on board with this episode now. So Archer's like, you're allowed to go around the ship. There's a couple of places that I would prefer you not to because, like, it's just dangerous. They have machinery and stuff. And she's like, your crew won't mind. And he goes, I seriously doubt it because no one on this fucking show cannot be horny at all times. Now this is the point where I'm like, this lady's obviously a setup, right? Like we can all see this shit coming. But we start like this episode is just chugging through its plot line because here's the part where, like, Trip and T'Pol are like, well, we're going to get to work on this thing. We'll take this deck and yada. And then there's like, we kind of cut back to this lady talking to people. It's like, we got shit to do and we got to get it done. After a few, like, quick scenes like that, we get to this woman who's wearing a third skimpy outfit.
Got another skimpy outfit.
Archer is in his pajamas. It looked like he was in his ready room, but maybe I misinterpreted. Maybe he was just in his bedroom.
I think he was in his quarters.
Yeah, he was.
And she comes in and she's just, I don't know, y'all have seen Firefly. It was pretty much that episode of Firefly with what's-her-face. You know, she kind of comes onto him and he tries to resist, but there's some...
Not like a lot, though.
Well, no, not a lot. So it's never actually said what is happening, but it seems like she has some kind of... Well, that too. But like she
like
has
Orion pheromones or something.
Yeah, well, there was a noise too, so I'm assuming it's some kind of psychic thing where like
telepathic dealy.
Yeah, she could just she can just horn you up with telepathy.
Her mere presence.
And this is where I was like, yeah, writers, act like Archer needs to be seduced by magic and not just like, there's some titties, like. So then she starts touching him, and it like X-rays his body in a weird way.
Uh-huh.
We find out why later, but at the time it's just very strange. And right as she's about to wrap her X-ray fingers around his dick, it cuts and she acts like he's been unconscious or whatever. Like he's been kind of dreaming this whole...
like daydreaming, standing up, yeah.
I'm assuming some time had passed was kind of the implication there, and that she took advantage of him and that he doesn't remember, which, all right.
I assumed it was she stopped when she got the data she needed and then made it seem
but like she definitely touched his penis. Like he got his pee-pee touched because she had to get that data.
It's a well-established fact that X-ray hands also include space roofies.
Right. Those abilities come together. We get to T'Pol and Tucker working on synthesizing this stuff. Unfortunately, their sample is not supposed to be under too much pressure, but because of the volatility of it, it goes all the way up to over 2,000 pressure units. Now, it may sound like I'm being funny by just saying the term pressure units, but that is the term they used.
They're like, the writer's like, I don't know what the fucking pressure units are. Just say pressure units.
Fucking ridiculous.
I just really like that Trellium D, like manufacturing Trellium D is I guess just space meth. Like you're just cooking space meth.
Update, our house is gone. So it explodes their lab and they got to start over. We cut back to what's-her-face, Rajiin, kind of wandering around the ship. We get a full sense of her outfit, and I can only really describe it as like if wrapping paper companies made an outfit. It's like shiny and striped in a weird way. It actually, the fruit roll-up is kind of working for it too. This one at least, like, she's slightly more covered up.
Slightly.
But the turbo lift opens and Hoshi comes out, and Hoshi gets caught in by this woman's charms right the fuck away.
She enters the horny field.
Yeah. So we get some implied girl on girl action here. Which again, she needs like detailed like anatomical scans. So I'm assuming
she's male and female scans.
She's all over that shit. And then at the very end of the act, so Tucker wasn't sleeping well. He hasn't been sleeping well. After the explosion, he promised to Paul that he'd come by for some neural stimulations, which sounds dirty, and it's not dirty, but like it's theoretically a real thing. But as T'Pol is sitting in her room, the door bell, I guess, rings. She lets the woman, and it's not Trip. It is Rajiin.
No. She was in her room already. She snuck into her room.
Oh, that's right. She was in there already.
Yeah. She got in and she was just like standing there in the closet.
Yeah, like T'Pol berated her and said, like, it's not customary for people to enter into other people's quarters. That's
right. T'Pol's trying to be kind of graceful because, like, she doesn't know what this woman knows. T'Pol is not immune to horny scanner technology. But she is a little resistant to it. So there's a lot of, like, weird body language stuff going on here. Got some more sensual ear stroking.
And then the rape begins.
I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I guess they were trying to say that T'Pol was not in control of her body, because I was like, just punch her or something. What are you doing? But I guess she wasn't really in control. She did ask for the person to stop.
Multiple times.
She did not stop. She asked multiple times. The woman starts rubbing her hands over to Paul to get her scanned. There's a lot of like weird breast framing. It's gross. I said, all aboard the lack of consent train. And they end up like, she ends up on top of T'Pol and scans her head so hard that T'Pol passes out. Mm-hmm. This is the point at which Tucker shows up, and Tucker's like ringing the doorbell. T'Pol doesn't answer. He asks the bridge, hey, where's T'Pol? There, she's in her quarters. He's like, well, that's weird. So he just uses his Tucker access to open the door, goes in, finds T'Pol on the floor. Rajiin doesn't bother with touchy-seducey bullshit on Tucker. She just up and clubs him upside the head with a vase and wanders out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
While Tucker's kind of recovering, she wanders down the hall. A security team was dispatched to get her. Crewman Brad is the one who responds first. Unfortunately, he is literally instantaneously seduced by this woman. Crewman Brad could not handle it.
Not even a little bit.
There's some kind of Reed and other people wandering around the ship looking for her. There's a part where like, sorry, go ahead.
It's tactical Reed.
Tactical. And like, they're looking down this hallway and they're following her around a corner, and then they look down the hallway and there's other people on the other end of the hallway. And so they're all like, I don't know where she went. And then it takes several seconds for Reed to go, well, how about that door right there? It's the only fucking door. It's like, yeah, why don't you try that one? She goes into engineering, shoots a dude, and then does this like Black Widow jump spin phaser shot, which I will point out, she does not successfully hit anyone with the phaser during this maneuver.
My spine hurt thinking about her jumping off of that fucking catwalk and just landing straight on her back.
Her back, yeah.
It was not a short fall.
No.
Mm-mm. It was several seconds of slow motion watching her twirl in the air. However, she eventually gets cornered by like several people, including Archer. I guess she didn't want to. Oh, she was going for the transporter. She was going to try to transport off. She didn't activate her wide dispersal seduction mode yet, so like there were too many people for her to seduce.
Yeah, too much man in the room for.
Yeah. Archer comes up to her and continues to be the least intimidating person you've ever met. Throws her in the brig.
Ever play a bad cop. No, he's not good at it.
Really bad at it. And he's talking to her in the brig when I assume Travis was like, Captain, some Xindi ships are approaching us. Mm-hmm. To which he replies, hull plating to full power, stand by weapons, because, they're on a diplomatic mission.
They're going to diplomatically shoot them in the face.
Okay, Act 4. So the council's talking for a little bit, and we find out that it's a bio weapon. Great. Or no, I'm sorry. That's what she says. The council's later.
Right.
She tells them that they're gathering information for a bio weapon. The Xindi dock with the Enterprise.
Hold on. I do want to point out that during Archer's conversation, we get the also gross line of Rajiin saying, well, she shouldn't have resisted me. Ew.
I missed that. I was probably too irate at that point.
Yeah.
The Xindi dock on the Enterprise, and they, the Mako guys, the Mako people, actually, there was a woman or two in there as well. The Mako people set up to shoot in this perfect bottleneck, but then when the Xindi come in, they don't. So they don't succeed. There's several Xindi next to this airlock all shooting, but the Mako forget that they have stun grenades. It's this whole this particular moment was stupid.
Well, the Xindi also had seemed like some type of personal shield too.
Only the one kind of Xindi. And it wasn't these ones, because the one dude got shot and fell down.
Yeah, it seemed like some of the reptilian ones had it and some didn't. It was very confusing as to what was going on there.
Yeah, Xindi supply situations are very confusing.
Oh,
one of the Xindi has their phaser set to skinned knee because he shoots one of the Mako and she just goes, and then gets dragged off. So I'm not sure, what the fuck was going on there. we get like a cut to another actiony scene where like some Mako troops are setting up down a hall. There's like, so the hallways are set up so that there's bulkhead lines that they can hide behind. So there's the one dude hiding behind the one side and the other dude hiding behind another side, and the third dude deciding that his best cover option is behind his own friend.
I mean, it is cover.
Yes, it is cover for him. However, I think these weren't the bug ones, were they? Yeah, they were. The bugs Indy show up and their phasers are set to poison dart. So like
the one reptile guy had like the fucking glob shooter. That was fucking weird.
Yeah, the little needle grenade. That was
was the reptile guy. I thought that was the insect. Yeah, the reptile guy shoots this glob at the wall behind them, and then it shoots out poison darts that hits everybody and they fall unconscious. Kind of clever because it like makes cover useless.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically these indies successfully take the woman back from the Enterprise and fucking book it. One of the reptilians, Indy, is knocked unconscious, so he apparently has like a cyanide pill built into his body that like just kind of went off and he died.
Suicide gland.
Woo! And
I'm not sure how that triggers. I'm wondering, like,
I don't know. And the Xindi disappear. The Xindi ships fly off and disappear into what Travis describes as some kind of vortex.
Yeah,
we
what
did
did that
not
mean exactly?
see a vortex. All we saw was them kind of vanish.
Yeah, it just looked like they turned on their cloaking.
Yes, that's exactly what it looked like. It also kind of looked like maybe like one of those sphere cloaking sheet like deals.
Yeah.
Oh.
We now get a scene of the council, and they're like, we need to make this bioweapon. It's like, oh, we can't without proper samples from their anatomy. And the lizard Xindi are like, we got what's her face back, and she fetched several samples. They didn't actually say that, but that's what it sounded like.
Pretty much.
She's in like a 7 of 9 skin tight jumpsuit thing for some reason.
I was gonna say she is more covered, and yet somehow still just
still gross,
sexy. Yeah.
So they show that they've got scans of the humans, and they're going to start working on a bioweapon, and that's kind of where the episode cuts, with a victory going to the Xindi Council.
Now they've got 2 ways to kill humans.
Woo.
All right, so on a scale from 1 to 5, where 0 is threshold, what are we feeling? You want to go first, Rob?
Oh, God, I was hoping you wouldn't pick me first. So here's the thing, right? This episode, without the whole, like, it was rape. Like, let's be real here. Or sexual assault at the very least. Like, without all of that, like Chris was saying earlier, the bones of this episode were pretty good. I appreciated the continuity from week to week. I liked all of the callbacks to prior episodes. Without it would have been really good, but, like, I just can't rate this one well because of it. Like, it's just flawed because of it all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So
I'm gonna give it a 1. Like, it was just
okay.
I was not okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty much in total agreement with you. I had it at a 2 only because the base plot I think was pretty decent. It's just all the dressings that they put on it, both literally and figuratively, were gross and not necessary to the plot. But, you know, Enterprise is gonna Enterprise, so 2 for me.
So I wanted to like this episode. And when I think about it, like in terms of the storytelling concepts that are in, it worked pretty well. As like an episode that takes place inside a longer arc, I think it worked well. My annoyance is that the fact that like you could have pulled this saved the slave that turned out to fuck you in the end without all this horny bullshit.
Yeah.
Like that was a fine plot to use. It just didn't have to be she rapes a person. Like,
right.
So I don't know. I wanted to give it a 4 because I'm like, this is pretty fucking good.
Yeah, my thought process was, you know, plot wise maybe deserved a 4, but due to everything else, it got down to a 2.
Yeah, and I guess I'm gonna have to give it a 2 as well. My initial gut was like 4, maybe 3, but I think now that I've talked about it more, it's like, oh god, I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't with
Like,
this shit.
They could have, even with like the seducing and all, like if they had just shown that she had like knocked them unconscious or whatever, and then gotten their bioscans done and then left, like that would have been
Sure, yeah. If she
at least
seduced
more
them, but then
palatable,
instead
you
of
know?
actually like getting gross with them, she just like knocked them out with a hypo spray or
Right,
whatever.
not
It would have
erotically
been
Right.
felt them up and
better. Still stupid with the horniness, but better.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. All right. Well, so then we will take a short break and we will be back with a deep dive. Welcome back. So, I wanted to have a brief discussion about something that has always kind of troubled me in the realm of science fiction. We see it a lot in Star Trek, but we see it in a lot of different science fiction. And that is the, like, general understanding that all science fiction authors seem to have that, like, somebody's going to be doing some slavery. And it's a little uncomfortable.
yeah. Yes. Hard agree here.
And like, I'm going to start with talking about Star Trek, but I'm going to get into a couple of other topics as well. Because I think that it's the fact that like, well, there's just going to be slave races in Star Trek, or I'm sorry, in science fiction, is such a universal truth that it's almost like you almost don't even notice until you think about it. And in Star Trek, for the most part, the races that are the ones that own slaves are generally the bad guys, at least.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is that laurel to fall back upon. However, the problem is that, like, and this has been my problem with like using rape as a shorthand for a bad person, is like there are plenty of ways to show that someone is a bad guy. You don't need to do the worst thing that's humanly imaginable, you know?
Yeah, just give him a man bun.
Yeah, like, easy to hate somebody with a man bun. It's funny because I currently have enough hair that I could probably almost man bun.
Get a haircut, hippie.
In Star Trek, of course, the big slave races we talk about are the Orions. Although they are kind of, they do kind of a twist on it because you are expected to assume at first that it is the Orion women that are enslaved, but it's actually the Orion men. But that is just their internal society. They also take slaves from other races. So like Orion slaving raids is like a big thing, right? And this has been true since TOS.
They're kind of the cartoonish bad guys of the Star Trek universe.
Right.
Yeah.
And that it starts in TOS and it continues through like Discovery because there's the Orion like slave concept extends all the way into like the far future when Discovery goes to the future. But there are other races that are mentioned as, you know, kind of owning slaves, owning people, things like that. And to different degrees, like the Cardassians' forced labor camps is kind of like cited as one of them, which does happen. But there's also a casualness to slavery that happens in Star Trek, and this episode is a good example of that because, like, they're just at a market where people are sold, and as European descended white people, that probably doesn't hit us as much as it should, because that's really fucked up.
Well, yes. Also, I think how it is portrayed also is, it doesn't, especially in this type of setting like Star Trek does, like it's just like, oh, look at all the sexy babes in the market. It's not, oh, look at those people being sold for their sexual organs.
Right. So oh, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing that they frequently use it for is as a storytelling device to show that somebody needs to be rescued.
Right. And like, I agree with you, Chris, in the way that like the cinematography, the writing, the way the shots are framed, like it's clear that we are supposed to be ogling these women.
Right.
and not like, oh shit, they're in
Not
a dire
concerned for their
situation.
well-being. Yeah.
And like, we know this instinctively because other than the one that scurried into Archer's arms, he did nothing for these people. Like, he could have done, like, even a fucking mention would have been better than nothing. But there was no effort made to actually, like, rescue these people.
I don't even know, we don't believe in buying people to the guy trying to sell them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think he said, like, did he say, no, he said it to her when they were on the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to him. He's just like, no thanks. Like,
yeah.
maybe next Tuesday.
And it's one of those things where it's like, it's, and this is why I think that using it as a shorthand for a villain is not only disingenuous, but is also like fucking rude of the writers, because in some episodes, you write things like slavery is fucking abhorrent to the point where we would never consider it. And this was an argument used in the Data is a Man episode of TNG.
Measure of Man.
Measure of Man. I was going to say Making of a Man, but that wasn't right. Measure of a Man, like one of the winning arguments of that little case was that like, oh, so if we built a bunch of sentient robots, they would just be property. That's slavery. And everyone was like, oh my God, slavery, right? But then like, we go down to this planet and Archer can't even like bother to say, dude, what the fuck, man? Like,
yeah,
nothing. So it's not only just like a callous kind of plot device, but it's also like, I don't care for the idea that it's just an inevitability. It seems, I don't know. It just seems gross. And
yeah, to be honest, this is a difficulty I have with, and Rob, you'll probably agree with me here, with anime a lot sometimes, is you see a lot of the same thing, like when it's like another world or whatever, and there's just, slavery is commonplace. That's just how people do things here. And it's like, oh, well, that sucks and I hate it. Why are you doing that?
Right. And like and obviously Star Trek is not the only place that this happens. Anime is, yes, it happens in a lot of different anime. But like, even things like, so we play a game called Stellaris.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need for slavery to be a mechanic in that game.
You know, I'm like, I've tried to like lean in to be like the bad guy race. I'm just like, nope, I can't do it.
It feels gross as shit. But like, it's one of those things where I understand that people argue. I understand that they argue that like, well, you know, there's bad people out there, but like, I don't know. I don't want to sound too millennial SJW here, although I am one, so fuck off. We don't need that to be in our video game, right? Like, the game is perfectly fine without it. And the suggestion that, well, this makes it better or is interesting in some way, shape, or form is a very white colonialist like take on that. Because I highly doubt that people who have actually been affected by things like chattel slavery view it that way, you know?
Yeah, it's, I think, just like rape and like media, as you said, a lot of times uses it as shorthand for the bad guys. And I think there is proper ways that media addresses those and views those things and like uses them as the plot and uses them to kind of demonstrate the horrors of those institutions. And then there's media that just includes them on the side as
world building, right?
Or sometimes you get it as shock value to try and like Game of Thrones.
What do you mean? Or is that rape you're talking about?
Yeah, it's just that it's just there purely for shock value.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. So and I'm going to be honest, and this is coming from someone who is you know, I am a working creative, for lack of a better term. Like, it is lazy too, you know? Like, it's lazy to just be like, oh, over here there are slaves. And this is not unique to science fiction in any way, shape, or form. I mean, most fantasy does it too, in kind of a gross way. Although, does Tolkien do it? I mean, the orcs kind of, but they're more just that's more like peasants, really, like slaves per se.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think Tolkien really does it. That's interesting. But like,
I'm trying to think of examples and I can't.
Right. But like Harry Potter's got this whole fucking thing going on.
Yeah.
Ourselves.
And it's just gross. It's very, very gross.
Yeah. Oh god, Harry Potter is like the house elves in that is just like how all that happens and like how they like pretend with it. Like it's like pretend like they're doing something about it when they're not. In that it's just
this is what happens when a fucking like a white British woman like the most colonialist takes you can find. So and like I don't know, this discussion is more of an observation than anything else because like there's nothing I could fucking do about it, you know.
Sure.
It's not going anywhere. The idea that like in a science fiction world, there has to be a race that has slaves, or the institution of slavery is totally cool, is just like it just seems like it's a fucking inevitability.
Yeah, I think it's important though. I know I totally understand what you mean. Like it's definitely something that's going to continue to be in media. However, I think it is important to at least try to make people understand that there is like sometimes. Like especially when I was younger, I would just accept things and not critically think about them and how they're being portrayed in the story and that how that affects how you think about things in general. And I think it is important to take a beat and kind of examine those things a little bit harder. So maybe you think about them a little bit more in the next thing you watch or the next thing you play.
Right.
Yeah, like I feel like TNG is pretty good about that overall, making you think back to like human history, especially around topics like slavery. Like I think there's a conversation that Picard has with Guinan at one point about it, where like it's important to acknowledge that it happened and that it was bad, so that like you don't make the same mistakes in the future. You know.
I think that may have been the Measure of a Man episode because he was talking to Guinan. So
you know what? I think you're right.
I think we're talking about the same scene. So yeah.
Yeah.
And it is not lost on anyone who was writing that show that like Whoopi Goldberg is a black woman.
Oh yeah.
Like so yes, like very poignant remarks from her. But it's one of those things where it's like it feels two-faced because on the one side they're like making this very key like remark about like forced servitude and chattel slavery. But then, like, they still use it as a plot point every chance they get, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the very least, though, they do address it.
Right.
As opposed to just having it as set dressing, which I think is the bigger issue here.
Right, and that's what this episode really is. Because, like...
Yeah.
Set dressing, absolutely, yeah.
It didn't... Like, the fact that she was a slave had no bearing on the story whatsoever.
No, she could have been, on the run from some, police force or something like that.
Or she could have been trying to get out of a bad marriage. She could have been trying to evade an overbearing father or some shit.
Right. She could have been
absolutely.
Needed some medical thing cured that they could only do on Enterprise or whatever.
Absolutely. She could have just stowed away because she didn't have the money to get off that planet. Like,
sure.
Yeah, any number of things. But no,
man. And, like, how cool would it have been? So, like, the medical thing would have been a good one, too, Chris. Because, like, then Phlox could have realized that, like, maybe she had something implanted in her and the disease wasn't really real. Like, it would have provided another interesting plot point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
To fill all the time that we eliminate all that stupid, horny bullshit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That would have been a much better episode. Shit. So anyways, as a white guy, I'm going to conclude by saying, fucking stop it. Just stop it. Like, stop doing it. This is enough. I've seen enough slave shit. We're good. And to be clear, there's a very important caveat here. The very important caveat is, if you're a writer of color and you are using it as an analysis of what it's like to live with that history, 100% valid. Like, I am not the person to tell you not to do that. And the example I would give of this is there's a writer named Samuel R. Delaney. I don't think you were there the night we met him. He headed up the writing department at UPenn for a while. I don't know if he's still there. But he wrote a book called Stars in My Pocket Like Grains of Sand, a very long, kind of like epic science fiction story. But it was all about, like, there was this race of humans called drones that were bred to be slaves. And it was all about, like, an uprising and how they were, like, fighting for rights and stuff. And coming from Samuel R. Delaney, a black man, that is a very specific, poignant plot, you know? So, like, that's fine. I don't have any issues with that. But using it as just, like, casual set dressing to just shorthand how evil somebody is just gross. And everyone should stop doing it.
Yeah. So say the three white guys.
Yes. Yes. So, all right, that's enough of that. So, we'll take a little break, and then we'll be back with a Potpourri.
Welcome back. All right. So, for our Potpourri today, I was inspired by this episode and was looking online for inspiration for what our Potpourri today would be. And I happened upon a Polygon little article here titled The 10 Horniest Episodes of Star Trek Ranked by Cultural Impact, which I thought was an interesting twist.
What the fuck? What it? Oh, okay.
So this was written by a Susanna Polo.
May I ask a question?
You may ask
I have two questions. One,
yes.
When was this article written?
I could not find a date on this anywhere.
Okay.
Wait, no, here it is. February 14th of this year. So
this
recently.
year? Oh, shit. Okay.
Interesting.
2, how many of these episodes are Enterprise?
Actually, none.
Fuck you. It's a shit list then.
Now,
she doesn't know what she's doing.
Hey.
Can I ask a question?
Hold on. I did note that this is ranked by cultural impact. And I'll real quick before you get to your question,
Nobody watched
Rob.
Enterprise, so there was no cultural impact.
This is pretty accurate, yes. So I want to read their kind of description of this.
Okay.
Horniness is often contained in other human experiences, but for our purposes, we must focus on Star Trek episodes that are purely horny. Not a romantic arc that includes the presumption of sexual activity or two friends bonding by discussing their relationship experience. That's merely horny adjacent, horny acknowledging, horny positive. If you're looking for an episode like that to enjoy on Valentine's Day, I recommend some other ones. Here we're looking for horniness
February 14th.
Here we're looking for horniness as a plot hook. Set dressing or titillation? Is sexual desire being presented as simply an urge that deserves satisfying? Could the episode be a work of pornography with all the sex scenes cut out? Are you getting the distinct sense that you're being shown somebody else's kink and that maybe they haven't realized not everyone is into this? If so, you might not be watching a bad episode of Star Trek, although it might be an awkward experience if your parents are in the room, but you are watching a horny one.
I'm annoyed.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
So this did not answer my question.
Okay.
How are they quantifying cultural impact?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask how they're quantifying horniness.
So let's see here. Horniness is a universal fact of human condition that has given us some of our greatest works of literature, nay, of philosophy. And yet, sometimes an attempt to meditate on sexual desire completely flubs, and a veneer of the philosophical or romantic or fraternal, and you're just left with horniness. And sometimes it's Star Trek's horniest moments that seize our collective consciousness in an iron grip and never let go. Star Trek was horny right from the pilot episode of the original series when aliens kidnapped the captain to trap him in a forced beating program with a nubile young woman. But could the impact of one horny episode of Star Trek really echo down the decades to our modern lives? Absolutely, and we'll prove it. These are the horniness episodes of Star Trek ranked by the influence they've exerted on our culture. So it's kind of a broad, like, did it affect other episodes of Star Trek? Did it affect kind of the cultural zeitgeist of sci-fi, of whatever?
My issue is that it sounds like what they're saying is they found the 10 horniest episodes and then they ranked those 10 based on their cultural impact. And there is no way you cannot have at least 1 or 2 Enterprise episodes in a rank of the top 10 horniest episodes of Star Trek.
I don't
Like,
necessarily
they said
disagree with you.
horniness as a plot hook. You've got the fucking T'Pol Ponfar episode.
Okay, that is mentioned actually.
Oh,
What about the like medically induced Ponfar?
Let
where
me
she's stuck in
get to the
deep
list.
one?
no.
All right. So, the first one is
What about Space Slug?
Just let me fucking talk, all right? The first one is Justice from the first season of Next Generation. And I'm going to go ahead and post an image from this episode in the chat. And I highlighted something.
Oh, God.
Oh, I forgot about these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They gave kind of a horny rating and cultural rating for each episode they listed here. Horny rating was 4, which seems low for this episode, honestly.
Yeah, it does.
The cultural rating was 0.
Fucking Gilderoy Lockhart here with his fucking testicles.
Yes, he has man camel toe going on.
Yeah, he's smuggling some grapes right now.
Did he tuck his penis in the back? Is that what?
No, it's just
I think
perched it's pointing up, perched atop the testicles.
Is it? I thought his dick was at the side there and those balls on the other side.
That could be. So this is the episode, a cultural, sexually liberated aliens believes quite strongly in capital punishment. So in this episode, this is the one where Wesley just falls into some flowers and is sentenced to death while all these half-naked people are running around banging and making out and whatnot.
I remember this episode being very uncomfortable with how they were talking about the children.
It was a completely terrible episode, yes. So, yeah, in a plot straight out of the TOS playbook, the Enterprise finds a utopian planet of sexually liberated humanoids run afoul of their only societal flaw, a draconian and randomized legal system, and discovers that they worship a false god. So this had writers from the original series, John D.F. Black and director James L. Conway, relished in the sexuality of the aliens, where they could, get away with more in the 80s than they could in the 60s.
I don't like the way that you just used the word relished.
The women are braless. The men wear a weird Speedo wrap that perfectly frames their exposed nipples, and the only way to get places is by jogging.
Yeah,
So
the
much
jogging. The jogging was so fucking ridiculous.
When you do get there, Parliament is just a massage parlor full of barely clad people doing aerobics and making out.
And I don't know how to properly describe what is happening here, but like when you hear that description, it sounds more clothing than what is happening, because like this is not like leather or like some kind of like thick nylon strapping.
It looks like someone tore his shirt.
Yeah, it looks like a sheet. Like a white sheet. Like it looks like.
No, but a sheet implies more coverage. This is a shirt that
I meant in material,
was torn.
Like it looks like if he sweats even a little bit, you'll be able to see his balls immediately.
Yeah.
So the real clincher on the episode's horniness is that it's not even relevant. The story is about Wesley getting the death penalty for stepping on some flowers. There's earnest, cheerful engagement in sexual plays, purely set dressing, and pure horniness.
Yeah.
I remember being mad at this episode because it was like, oh, I see, our ideals don't mean shit when it's like we have to rescue a main member of the cast.
All right, number 9, Conundrum from Next Generation Season 5. They gave it a horny rating of 7, cultural rating of 0. What's it about? 2 different women decide it's exactly the right time to start a sexual relationship with Commander Riker, despite a sudden ship-wide bout of amnesia. Conundrum doesn't have any particular influence as an episode of Star Trek, but it's rates high on the horny scale for the episode's subplot, from the simply preposterous notion that a ship full of coworkers who had just lost their memories would immediately get down to boning. Writers Barry Schlocknick and Paul Schiffer even hang a lampshade on it, where Ensign Rowe, this is the one where Ensign Rowe and the counselor, I can't remember her name, it's escaping Troy. Decide that they both want to bang Riker immediately after they lose their memories. Rose says, "For all we know, you and I could be married." Riker says, "No." Says, "For all we know, you and I could hate each other," which is true. So yeah, that was yep.
Ew.
Do either of you remember that episode?
I don't remember that episode at all, but I don't want to.
Yeah, you'll remember the next one.
Don't worry, we're gonna watch it again.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Number 8. Favorite Son from Voyager Season 3. Do you remember which episode this is, Stanford?
Okay, hold on. Stand by. It's the favorite son. Yes, Harry is the favorite son. Is it Harry wants to bone that lady on the Generation ship so bad he wants to leave Voyager to do it?
Oh, no, close. Horny rating of 10. A whole planet of hot babes have an absurdly complicated plan to sex Harry Kim to death.
Different one. Yeah.
Have you watched this episode with our kid?
Not yet. This was a little later. Speaking of which, Rob, you watched Voyager this weekend with me and my kid.
I did.
It's so much better than Enterprise. It's not even fucking close.
It's Like, I feel like I have not had a whole lot of Star Trek experience while we've been watching Enterprise. Like, I've been watching Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. But, like, I forgot how much better 90s Trek was than Enterprise.
All right. So, the article writer writes,
actually,
I applaud.
Sorry, one real quick thing. Fortunate. No, that's our boy. What the fuck was it called?
Fortunate Son.
Fortunate Son. Except for the horniness thing. Favorite son. Except for the horniness thing, a good concept, actually. The episode was not bad in its structure. It has a lot to do with, like, what do you know? And, like, what is implanted? And whether or not you could tell the difference. It's really fucking interesting.
So the article writer writes, I applaud screenwriter Lisa Klink for this absolutely unhinged episode of Star Trek in which the Teresian species, whose sexual reproduction acquires the death of the male individual, has developed an incredibly convoluted system of conning men into having sex with them. This involves infecting random alien men with a virus that slowly turns them into a Teresian, convincing the man he's been a Teresian all along and was transported from Teresia as an embryo to be raised on his homeworld by unknowing parents. Even if that homeworld was in a separate quadrant of the galaxy, a feat of engineering that would be of much interest to the stranded crew of Voyager. Conning that man into thinking he's been a special little boy all along, whose destiny is to live on a planet where all the women are hot and all want to have sex with him, and bow to his every whim, and then stealing his sperm and killing him. It's bananas!
Yeah, like when you say it like that.
All right, we revisit Voyager here on number 7, which is Fairhaven. They give it a horny rating of 5, cultural rating of 1. Forced to batten down because of a space storm, the whole Voyager crew decides to get really into LARPing everyday life in a small 19th century Irish town. There's a number of Star Trek episodes that showcase the lust or love that you can erupt between a crew member and a holodeck character. Fairhaven is the only one that works. Voyager is alone in the Delta Quadrant, and it would be ethically complicated for Captain Janeway to get involved with any of her crew. So when Janeway becomes sexually attracted to a fictional bartender, she mods his program to make him single and more erudite. Frankly, it's a genuine, rare, positive description of middle-aged female sexual desire. Fairhaven will forever live in the minds of Voyager fans for writer Robin Jill Berger's indelible line, "Computer, delete the wife."
Yeah, so like, and that's one where, like, I don't know, calling that horny, I think, is unfair because what she was seeking was not sex, it was romance. And like, I understand that those are linked concepts, but like, there's a difference between this and Crusher boning that ghost. Like,
speaking of which, next on our list, Sub Rosa.
Freaking Ronin.
Sub Rosa, the Next Generation Season 7. Horny rating 10. Cultural rating 2. What's it about? The one where Dr. Crusher fucks a ghost.
Is that the whole description?
Yep. Everything I said just about the importance of normalizing middle-aged female sexual desire, it does not apply here. Sub Rosa builds a solid wall of serviceable romance novel tropes that clash mightily with Star Trek's science fiction setting. The whole episode takes place on a planet that has been terraformed to resemble the climate of Scotland as closely as possible. There's a vague but menacing groundskeeper and a ghost that turns up when anyone lights a family heirloom candle. The latter turns out to be a lightly vampiric energy being. After he has dubiously consenting ghost sex with Dr. Crusher multiple times on screen, he also did this with his grandmother and great-grandmother. Dr. Crusher, Sub Rosa says, has a family heirloom fuck ghost / energy empire.
Yeah, the family dildo. Yeah,
the family fuck ghost. Yeah,
and like I like that this episode still falls into like something that they did in TNG, but kind of stopped after TNG, which is the idea that like well, we have massive, special, super advanced terraforming technology, so we're going to make an entire planet be like this thing I remember from Earth this one time. Because, like, they had the African planet and the Irish planet, and, like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yep.
Oh, you forgot about the, like, mobster Chicago planet.
Well, that was a holodeck, wasn't it?
That was TOS.
You're talking about TOS.
That was TOS. Yeah. All right. By the way, I don't know. I know I sent this to Stanford a while back. Did I send you the Up Is Not Jump video about this episode, Chris?
Yep.
This is that
so
Up Is Not Jump episode is why I know about it, like in the top of my head, because I don't remember watching this shit.
It is, and that's why it's on this list, is because it is so like infamous in Star Trek fandom.
I think the Up Is Not Jump may have actually brought it back into the zeitgeist in a way that it wasn't until then.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. Next on the list was The Naked Now from Next Generation Season 1. This is the second episode of Season 1, mind you.
Is it
Yes,
Sorry,
I'm fully functional. Horny rating 8, cultural rating 5. The away team brings back a horny disease. It's easy to forget The Naked Now is the second full episode of Star Trek Next Generation, but it shouldn't be forgotten that the folks behind TNG wanted you to know, as soon as narratively possible, that the robot fucks.
I can't say that calling it a horny disease is a little derisive, not derisive, not diminutive. What am I thinking of?
Derivative?
Not derivative. Like it boils it down to too simple of an idea. There's a D word in there. But like, because it didn't make you horny. It made you drunk. Because it was actually the virus was actually in TOS. It was like a callback.
So this was written by some of the original series writers as well. D.F. Black and D.C. Fontana were apparently rewriting an unused Gene Roddenberry script from the original series.
Okay.
But this time with the TV Censorship Board of 1987, so they could get away with shit more. So functionally, it makes security officer Tasha Yar carnally desire data, and he says he's fully functional.
Bear in mind, and this is some highbrow interpretations of a really stupid episode. It is making you drunk, which means it is reducing your inhibitions. It is not making her horny for data. She already had those thoughts.
Yeah. That's worse now. Thank you.
Yes. And as needs to be perfectly clear, if one of the people in the sexual relationship is inebriated, that is no longer consent. And Data did know that she was impaired.
But he's fully functional.
Yes. Data raped Tasha Yar.
It's fully functional. Fully functional. Anyway, next episode, Mirror, Mirror, which I thought was an interesting inclusion on this, which is an original series, season 2.
Horny because George Takei doesn't wear a shirt the whole time? Oh, no, wait, that was, you know what? Actually, I take that back. That's the episode where they got drunk in TOS.
Yeah.
So they said this is a horny rating of 3, rising to 7, with a cultural rating of 7. The way team accidentally transports into a parallel universe of evil. So obviously Mirror Mirror is the first appearance of the infamous Mirror universe, where all sentient life innately possesses fewer social and ethical inhibitions, and the Terran Empire are a bunch of big dickheads. So they mention it is honestly not that horny. Kirk finds out that his Terran counterpart has a captain's woman, which is apparently a position of intimate duties that female officers aspire to. But they also don't go into too much detail about this.
How did, see, and this is where, like, and not that I like Enterprise, but, like, the Mirror Universe episodes of Enterprise are hornier than that.
Yeah.
But, like, a lot.
But, however, they go on to say, this kind of, because it introduced the Mirror Universe and kind of spawned some of these later Mirror Universe episodes.
All right.
Because this is cultural impact, this rating, by the way, you know,
they said that they were doing the horniest episodes, which they would then rank amongst one another as cultural impact.
I feel like you're putting words in their mouth.
No, that is what they said. They gave a cultural impact of 0 to one of the episodes. Okay.
2 of them.
Anyway, this is the universe that fucks.
Yeah, it does.
Deep Space Nine returned to the Mirror Universe much later, obviously. The Mirror Universe counterparts of multiple ostensibly straight DS9 characters turn out to be thirsty bisexuals in shrink-wrap leather. Following that,
whomst amongst us is not a horny bisexual in shrink-wrap leather?
Enterprise revisited the captain's woman, and by the time Discovery came around, bisexuality and promiscuity had lost their shocking quality, so the Mirror Universe boldly ventured into sexual kink.
Hey, Rob, guess who the captain's woman is on Enterprise?
On Enterprise? Is it T'Pol?
It's not.
Is it Hoshi?
Hoshi?
It is.
I don't
Hoshi.
remember.
Oh, it's Hoshi.
jeez.
Well, she's the only other female character of note in that show, so...
Sure is.
Oh, but what about Cutler, Chris?
I said
Yeah,
of
Chris.
note.
What about Cutler?
She's not with us anymore.
Dude, if there was a foundation to that woman, you would owe them money right now.
I feel like you're putting something on me I didn't do.
Don't you put that juju on me.
So the next one we have on the list is the Menagerie of season 1 of the original series. So they had a hoarding rating 4, but cultural rating of 8. Because this is the one, obviously in the original series where they reuse footage from the unaired pilot as a flashback, which introduces Pike. But it's also the very first appearance of the Orion slave girl, which we talked about earlier. So basically they kind of go on to say that this, talks about all the tropes of the Orions with their sex pheromones and whatnot, and how it informed lots of other Star Trek episodes of Orion slave girls and that general phenomenon in Star Trek. I don't agree with the rating on this one. I don't think it deserves to be that high, but there it is. Next on the list, we had Plato's Stepchildren, which is, of course, the famous episode where Uhura and Kirk kiss. Once again, low horny rating of 3, but cultural of 9. So, no matter how many examples arise to disprove it or lessen its claim to fame, Plato's Stepchildren just can't shake the legend that it had the first interracial kiss on television. And while it might be more accurate to describe it as the first kiss between a black person and a white person in a scripted American TV series, there's no doubt that the episode received significant executive pushback. Thing nobody ever talks about is the whole point of the scene is that Kirk and Uhura don't want to kiss each other. The Platonians' goal is to provoke surrender by humiliation, beginning by impinging on the dignity of their victims. When that fails, they move on to making people kiss. Nobody doing the smooching here is actually horny about it. It's the use of sexual acts and sexual transgression as a tool for narrative escalation that puts this episode in the horny category.
So many discussions of this episode talk about the fact that, this is the first time a man and a white man and a black woman kiss as, this moment in, racial, relations in this country. But they don't talk about how in, literally the same scene, but a little before, Will Shatner is literally whipping Uhura with a whip.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks, 60s.
Oh my god.
So last on the list, they have Amok Time, which is the original series season 2, and this is the episode that birthed Pon farr for all of Star Trek. AKA Spock has to fuck or he'll die. So the horny rating of the initial episode was 4, but they noted as a rising to 11 because of all the other Pon farr episodes that it spawned.
11.
So Amok Time, the first appearance of the Vulcan concept of Pon farr, is that there's a lot less overt sexual content in it. We have obviously talked about Pon farr a bunch, so I'm not going to go into that. But the key context when considering the significant body of Star Trek episodes that revisit Pon farr discard the idea that it can be treated by sating aggression instead of sex, and frankly wallow in using it as a plot device for dubious consent. Which I think is interesting because I didn't really think about that because I know of the episode but never really watched it end to end. Because he can, fight to the death, so to speak, to sate this aggression instead of boning, which the rest of the Star Trek series totally just throws away. They're like, no, we want to make it about the fucking.
A fight to the death between Phlox and T'Pol might have been far more interesting.
So in Star Trek: The Search for Spock, an adult woman must have sex with a mindless teenage Spock to save his life. Voyager takes two bites
bunch of times.
Yeah.
A bunch of times.
Voyager
a bunch
takes
of times.
2 bites of the Bonfire Apple. First
Yes,
with
they do.
Tuvok undergoing the mortification of explaining his lust to a coworker, and then sating it with a hologram simulation of his wife. Then, in Blood Fever, the psychic fallout of a Vulcan coworker's Bonfire puts non-Vulcan chief engineer B'Elanna Torres into an amnesiac state, so sexually aggressive that a senior officer of the bridge crew orders another one of her coworkers to have sex with her, and everybody's like, yeah, that's fine. Which...
Wait,
yeah?
what? I don't remember that part. Did they order Tom to have sex with her?
I'm pretty sure that's what it was, yeah.
They were probably dating at the time.
Enterprise frankly simplifies things by having some space microbes put Vulcan officer T'Pol into an uncontrollable lust, just as she starts a 1-week quarantine with a coworker, who must nobly resist her lusty pleas. Whether or not it meant to be, Amok Time is inarguably among the most influential Star Trek episodes ever made. It was the point at which Kirk/Spock wing of Star Trek fandom became inevitable, creating a community that coined the term slash for fan fiction featuring queer pairings, and contributing hugely to the history of fanzines and the origins of modern fan convention culture. And it handed the franchise a ready-made template for pure horny plot contrivance.
Man, it would have been, I would be far more in favor of that episode if it was like, Kirk's like, I gotta help a bro out, and he just goes, like, they just go fucking, like, Spock and Kirk. That would be like, that like, it's like our friendship transcends, like, my insecurity about my sexuality.
Well, you know what? Maybe it'll happen in a modern Trek. Maybe like in Strange New Worlds.
Well, they got 1 season left.
Well, yeah, if they go follow the pattern. They do mention that it has not been limited to Star Trek culture either. Amok Time contains the first appearance of the phrase "live long and prosper," and the Vulcan salute, now considered so universal a reference that it's an emoji. They also mentioned that the music of its climactic fight has become a universal satirical sound cue for one-on-one combat.
What a great song.
Yeah. It's also widely, they say, acknowledged as popularizing sci-fi erotica tropes that would grow into various romance genres and science fiction and its permutations. So, yep, that concludes this list. I thought it was a fun read, so I wanted to kind of go through it and touch on the various episodes in here. We gotta assemble our own top 10 horniest episodes at some point as well.
Well,
it's all going to be Enterprise.
Well, and I'm curious though, if in Enterprise is not necessarily a plot device, it just is.
It's just
Although,
built into the DNA of this.
What this list kind of points out, though, maybe not intentionally, is that all of the horniness in Enterprise is not even interesting or original. It's just derivative horniness.
Uh-huh.
It's just derivative.
Derivative horniness. Well, any final thoughts, guys?
Enterprise is derivative.
I think that's a good note to land it on.
Star Trek derivative horniness.
As a reminder, please rate, review, share with our friends. Check out the videos Stanford's posting on TikTok and like and share those. It will help us tremendously. And we will catch you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.